Hi. So this week I wanted to talk about my college experiences. To give you a background, I graduated from Brandeis University in 2017 and I majored in economics, East Asian studies, and then I minored in legal studies. So every time I say that to people, people are like, oh, those are totally completely different. And I'm like, yeah, they are. When I was first applying to colleges, I was thinking, okay, maybe I could do like pharmacy, the sciences, because I like the sciences. Once I got like my financial aid, I was like, okay, this is way too expensive. So Northeastern would have been a 6-year program and it would have been $180,000. And my parents were like, we don't got that kind of money for you. So I was like, okay, cool. My parents were pushing me towards a private 4-year college. So UMass Boston was out of the picture, even though like now I look back and I'm like, ooh, I really should have taken that, at least like done my first 2 years there and then transfer my credits over to like a Boston University or something. Then I would have had like $14,000 to my name, so that would have been like a great help. So I chose econ because I took econ in high school. They have these little like simulations every single time. I would win somehow. I don't know, like all you have to do is relate it back to the reading and you can see like what she was testing for. So during these simulations, I would win all the time and I'm like, okay, I think I'd be great at econ. So I decided to major in econ. So I was taking all these econ classes and then I was like, okay, like let me try to brush up on my Chinese too. I only went to weekend Chinese school, so my Chinese isn't fluent by any means. So I was like, okay, it could be like an easy A or it could be the hardest class of my life. I had a Canadian coworker talk to me and he was like, Chinese class was the hardest class of my life. Oh, because he had to do like "bo po mo fo de te ne le" in like the first week and he had never learned any of that before. And I was like, oh, okay. I learned the phonetics around like my 5th grade class. Which is sad because I think it started from 2nd grade. So for a whole like 3-4 years, I had no idea how to read the pinyin, but I like rolled with it. So yeah, that's Chinese for you. I just kept going with Chinese because my GPA was going up. Econ was like fine for certain professors. Near the end, it starts getting repetitive because there really isn't too much in econ besides like graphs and finding where it intersects and finding the area underneath like a certain portion and seeing like why it impacts certain things. Once I got to global econ and international trade theory, they were basically the same class, so the homework was like very similar. And then I accidentally took business law class because initially it did freaking say that it qualified as an elective for my econ. So of course I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like I should learn some law, you know? So then I threw that in. And then of course someone at the registrar just like took it off the list because I'm pretty sure it had a social science like right next to it. I had this extra class that I took and it didn't count for anything. And so I thought, okay, you know what, screw it. I'm also gonna go for a legal studies minor. And it was pretty easy to get for the most part because in all the law classes that I took, you only had to write essays and prove your point. I think for the social aspect, it was really hard at Brandeis because everyone is so weird. I remember I would go to like frat parties and stuff because a couple of my friends were in sororities and they were like, oh, come along, it'll be fun. And then next thing you know, some guy is asking my guy friend for permission to dance with me. I'm like, I'm right here, I can hear you. And then this guy followed me to every single frat house that night. And then I saw him in the cafeteria. Yeah, it was really awkward. Regarding the party scene, I felt like there was such a lack of consent when I went to these parties. I'm so glad I was always pretty sober, like sober enough to be like, yeah, no, this isn't gonna fly with me. But I remember going to like a party that wasn't in my college and it was a complete 180. Guys actually asked for consent from you, not from someone else. And then, yeah, everyone was so respectful and I was just like, so I really think it's just like my college problem. There's like a little sprinkle of depression in my university, and if you ever needed help, you would be declined So they give you, I think it's like 5 or 10 free sessions. I'm not sure about the health insurance part because like I remember you couldn't sign up for classes if you didn't have health insurance, so I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure everyone was required to have some sort of health insurance. And so, well, I've heard a lot of people who try to get some therapy, they can't actually get it because there's a long wait list. So I felt like my university wasn't really supportive. And then we also had like a career center. Yeah, I don't really think they were that helpful either because I've always had no problem finding jobs. But then once it got to university, it was a lot harder because I felt like the alumni really don't care about you. Like the network connections that they claim to have in college, it's not there. So if it's already hard for you to find like a summer internship through the university, it's probably going to be harder for you to find a full-time job offer through the university. For the professors, oh god, this is terrible. All the good professors that I had were not actually full-time employed professors by the university. They were like contract professors, and I've even had classes where it was just a TA. Those were terrible. I'm sorry, like this guy, this was like my I'm like exposing myself right now. So I took pre-calc and then I took calc because I was like, my math is rusty. I remember in high school, my high school calculus teacher, she took the whole year off. So like imagine me just not knowing anything for a whole year. So I'm like, you know what, like let's just go back to the basics and then learn it all again. So I took pre-calc and it was fine. And then once in a while, this TA would come in and like go over practice questions with us before the exam. So then he would look at me, you know, to try to correct him because I always corrected him. And I'm like, oh, like right there, you forgot like the parentheses or something. And so he's like, oh yeah. And then like he got to the right answer. Once I got to calc, I'm like, I can't help you. And then of course, this guy had to be my actual teacher. And it sucked because the whole time he would do the problem and then the whole other half of the class was just him struggling to see where he effed up the problem and couldn't get the answer. So yeah, we were behind compared to the other class, and then I had no idea what was going on because this guy was solving the questions incorrectly. Yeah, I barely passed calc. It was really stupid because it suddenly became a requirement for econ, even though it wasn't for the past like gazillion years. Once I got to econ, you didn't even really need to know your derivatives. I didn't even need to know all those like integration rules and stuff with the division and multiplication. Like no, they were like the really simple derivatives. And I'm like, I could have done that. Like I didn't really need the math class. There was this one econ professor. I only sat in on this class, thank God. So the whale took this class with the professor and I was like, oh, maybe I want to take this class next year because the whale is like a year ahead of me. So I was like, oh, okay, maybe I want to take this class next year or next semester. It was terrible. It was so bad that like she kept changing her mind. She was like, okay, I will give you the answer key for your homework so you can prepare for the exams. Like that makes sense. And then all of a sudden she goes, no, that isn't fair anymore. So I decided not to share it. Yeah, so she got so annoying that the TA decided not to respond to her. And so the TA never gave back the homework assignments, the quizzes, the midterm exam. So she had nothing. And then she graded everyone on the final, which she probably didn't even grade because no one got it back. So she just assigned random grades to everyone. There was another professor who was just so like, she graded you based on if your opinion matched hers. She was also the professor at the Wales graduate school. So the whale was like, yeah, I don't think I want to take a law class if I'm going to see her again. But there was this one professor who scarred the crap out of me. So she was supposed to teach Southeast Asian arts. I needed the art requirement fulfilled. I'm not even gonna call her a professor because she was not a professor. This lady just focused on Indian arts, and then she was so fixated on the Indian kids, it made them so uncomfortable that all the Indian kids started skipping because they didn't want to be asked like, where are you really from? And then she tried to claim that a third of the class was plagiarizing on their essays, and most of us have no exposure to Indian arts. So we're like, where are we supposed to get this info from if you don't want us going on the internet, you don't want any like cited sources, we can't use the textbook. She disappeared midway through the semester. The whale was very glad because he was like, I would never have passed. I lived in the dorms all 4 years. I was also in like a forced triple and there was no space. The next semester, I got a single. I was like, I'm done with this. It was either junior or senior year. It got really competitive if you were going to live on campus because they were knocking down one of the dormitories. It's called the Castle. So this girl, she woke up, and because they were demolishing parts of the castle already, not the portion that she was in, she woke up and there were like rats crawling all over the place. And I'm like, oh my God. I think I've only been in the castle like a handful of times. One time it was under construction but I just really needed to pee. I had one of those toilets where if you had to flush, you had to pull on a string. So an alumnus visited one time and I was like, okay, if you have so much money, can you please donate into making nicer dorms? Because we don't have AC, we like barely have heat. He was complaining about the zoning problem because you're supposed to keep a certain section of the forest intact, and I was like, oh, but just like build up, why can't you build up? And I think that's exactly what they did, so I'm glad someone listened to me. For financial aid, I think my college was like kind of crappy about it. They would use any excuse they can to limit your financial aid the following year. So even though my financial aid was really good freshman year, they try to mess with it every single year. And I always had to fight the financial aid office. And it's really tiring because I was already working my summer job. I'm sweating. I'm covered in like ice cream. And then I have to get on the phone, but it has to be during their office hours. So then I have to fight with someone, and it just wasn't fun. We were forced to have meal plans. The whale actually did the math, and it ended up being like $30 to $60 per swipe if you lived on campus, because they make you buy all these like points and you only get like 13 meals or something for $3,000. So he emailed the president of the university and was like, hey, you know, for this amount, I could be eating at a really nice steakhouse every single day and I would still have money left over for dessert. But the year after, they lowered the pricing, so at least some good things came out of it. So that's what my college experience was like. If I could go back, I would probably take up blacksmithing. I would take up a trade. Something like really hands-on, because Germany is actually looking for people like that, and then you would get your citizenship and, dude, you know, free healthcare. But if I couldn't do that, I would probably have gone to UMass Boston for either 2 years or 4 years, or I would have gone to Boston University because their networks are bigger and there was probably like a better chance of me getting a job after college through the university, and they probably have more resources. Choose your colleges wisely, and I hope you don't end up with terrible professors like I did. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!
Gone to the dorms.
Oh yeah.
Those drug deals. Those bros.